I'm a little younger. I wasn't around. I didn't like live through the transition into Brian Johnson. I just heard it, and then my father grew me up on Dirty Deeds. I loved Bon Scott like that. I loved the way he had just had a different style, and Brian Johnson comes in. It filled the shoes pretty fucking well for you when you're living through that transition as a huge ACDC fan. Were you receptive, or were you one of the guys that's like, it's not fucking Bon Scott, I don't like it?
No. Matter of fact, I think that Brian Johnson's Back in Black, Those About to Rock, and Flick of the Switch are some of the greatest records ever made.
Agreed.
And for me, it was shocking because I had seen Bon, and I love Bon, and I love ACDC. They were my band. It was shocking that he was dead. And then it was even more shocking that a new record came out. Because back then you didn't have the internet or anything. I just had ACDC on my podcast, Let Them Be Talk. And it was the first podcast they ever did. And I was dying to ask them because, there's all these, questions. Did Bon write Back in Black? And they're not saying anything, So because this record came out like months later, and I went down. I remember specifically, I went to Tower Records. I bought it. I rode the bus there. I rode the bus all the way back, opened it up, looked at it. There's the singer. He's got a hat on. It's kind of weird. Okay, there he is. You don't have internet. You're not seeing anything. You don't know anything. You put it on. Hell's Bells comes on. And, the first second he comes on, you're kind of like, I don't know. This is kind of, all right. Then the next song comes on. Like, yeah. And by the third day, I was like, this fucking record's insane.
And the production on that album when it first came out was second to none, too. I mean, up until that point, they'd had great records and good sounding records, but I feel like that was the time, similar to Metallica would do it later with the Black Album, where they really focused on the sonic value to their music and really took it to that level on Back in Black.
Yeah, I mean, Mutt Lange, he killed it with Highway to Hell. And if you listen to Highway to Hell and you listen to Back in Black and Those About to Rock, and Def Leppard's High and Dry, which he also did. And of course, he did the big Def Leppard records too. But when you listen to those, I always say there's no dated tricks on it. There's no dated reverbs. There's no, like later Def Leppard gets into that.
Which is cool to hear. Don't get me wrong. I listen to all that shit, but I agree with you. The timeless. He did a great job, or those artists you're saying those albums did a great job of keeping the sound timeless in a way.
Yeah, and you got to think about they hired first to do Highway to Hell Eddie Kramer, who did the Hendrix records. And he came in and he's like, yeah, I want you guys to do a cover. And they're like, fuck this guy. And they fire him after a couple weeks. And then they get Mutt Lange, who's 100% unknown,
Yeah.
And so they it was lightning in a bottle. Songwriting went to another level of Highway to Hell and Back in Black. And Mutt Lange was, I think, learning to I'm going to experiment. I hear stuff that people aren't doing. And so it was all chemistry, lightning in a bottle, work ethic, grind. And the most important thing is the songs. The songwriting was next level.
Right.
The songwriting's great on Power Age. Yes, everybody loves Power Age. But if you listen to stuff like early ACDC, there would be corny songs on there, like I've got big balls.
Oh, but I love that song. No, when I was a kid, that was one of the staples we'd hear in my dad's Astro van. And, when you're a 5-year-old kid hearing a song about big balls, me and my two older brothers were laughing our asses off. It was hilarious.
I love it. But I'm saying that they would have some tongue in cheek.
Right.
Big balls, Crab City and Blues, Squealer, which is one of my favorites ever.
Yeah.
Soul Stripper, all that stuff, really cool. But by the time you get to Highway to Hell and you get Night Prowler, you're like, what the fuck is this band? It's a different band. And Mutt and that chemistry took them a long way. So Brian, I think the most underrated Brian record is Flick of the Switch. That would have been any other band's fucking dopest record ever, man. And I think, it's a lot what happens with all these bands, like say Kings of Leon, or any bands that have the big exploder record. And then those part-time fans come and then they kind of disappear. You know, Black Crowes, the first record, I still hear people go, whatever happened to the Black Crowes? You know, I love She Talks to Angels.
They're still doing their thing, man.
You ever heard of Amorica? You dumb, you know? But that Those About to Rock and Flick of the Switch, I think I like For Those About to Rock these days more than Back in Black, because it's so dark and weird and slow. It's really
what are your thoughts on Razor's Edge? I grew up with that on cassette.
Yeah,
and it was all over. So that was my era when I was like discovering music for myself in a way. Not really. I mean, I guess my brothers and father introduced me to ACDC, but it was like that album. I mean, Thunderstruck was on MTV and shit. The Money Talks video was all over MTV. So that album was like kind of my ACDC record, just because, you know, just the age that I was, right?
Right. I mean, I think ACDC over all of their records has 2 or 3 unreal tunes.
Right.
And with that particular record, you know, I'm not a fan of when Phil's not in the band drumming. I don't like the feel of the band, but the songwriting, like I said, once again, just every record, they have a couple tunes that would just go skyrocket and carry them all the way through.
Right.
To right now. You know, I thought their last record was
rad.
Oh man, it had some cool ass shit on it, you know? And I'm not a guy who's just like a fan of like, it's all great, man. You know, like I don't like Fly on the Wall record at all, you know? So, I critique them, but I love them to death. A lot of bands, I stick with bands all the way through.